I want to welcome all of you. Greetings on this beautiful Sabbath day. Greetings to those of you out there watching or listening. And yes, we do have good, strong fellowship here. And I hearken back to last week when there were two or three of us at the back table, and a hypothetical situation was brought up that if you were invited to speak on short notice, what do you do? So we discussed, perhaps you have a sermon you've given in the past, and we'll try that again. I don't generally keep mine, and then of course, a lot of our speakers have themes, and one particular gentleman, I know his theme through the years I've known him is to bridle the tongue, watch your tongue, and you thought I would have listened by now, because I made the statement that, there's so many things going on in the world, there's so much going on in life that there shouldn't be any shortage of subjects. And so if this hypothetical situation of getting asked to speak and then saying yes on short notice was to happen, is that a true statement? And I thought, I said it, so perhaps I should put it to the test. So I began to think, there are some subjects, but one particular came to mind. It was a phone call from a coworker of mine, and we had business over the phone. He's in another city now, still with the company. And we resolved that problem, and as he was about ready to wind down the conversation, he just very sincerely said, "Stan, will you pray for me?" And I kind of waited a second and was about to respond, "Well, of course I will," and wasn't really going to pry for any details unless he wanted to offer them. And he continued, "Pray for me," and he was still a little hesitant. "Would you pray for me for strength, that I'll have strength?" And this young man is very successful at what he does. It's a dear family. He's in good physical shape. He's actually a Golden Glove boxer, and he has had some back surgery in the past. But from all appearances, he is strong. He's got everything going for him. But I thought, okay, let me look at that subject of strength then. And of course, when we mention strength, we generally, at first, naturally, I think we think most of us think about physical strength. And when I think of those that I know with physical strength, I think of perhaps some athletes in the area, and one in particular who's from East Texas. He's a young man. I hear about him on our local sports channel on the radio quite a bit, and he is an excellent athlete, but he has this particular strength, and the sports broadcaster has known him since he was a child, and he noticed at his first Little League game that he had an extraordinary talent in his right arm and an extraordinary strength. And in fact, he was playing shortstop. His first throw to first base to get someone out was so unexpected to the first baseman and the other children's skill level that he broke his glasses. Hit him right in the face and broke his glasses. The ball came so hard and so fast. So the coaches, the parents got together and said to the young man's father, his father actually was a Major League Baseball pitcher, so he inherited some of this talent and strength. And they told his father, he's either going to have to roll the ball to first base, or he has to play first base, or he won't be throwing so many balls at other kids. So his father, not wanting him to be rolling the ball, said, then we'll just have him play first base. Well, then this sports broadcaster said later on in junior high school, he came across this boy again. His son, the broadcaster's son, is a couple years younger, but they happened to be playing in the same game. And he said this time he was playing shortstop. And time after time, almost impossible ball to retrieve, and then an even more impossible throw to first base. This young man did it rather effortlessly. And he thought, he's going to be a professional baseball player. And then there's also footage of him as a young man playing basketball. Very talented at that. But he decided that he was going to play football. And some of you may know who I'm talking about. He is currently the 23-year-old starting quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. His name is Patrick Mahomes. He's from the Tyler area, White House in particular. And like the sports broadcaster said, he apparently was born with a talent and a strength from God in that right arm that most of us do not have. But there are more than one types of strength, isn't there? And this friend of mine who wanted me to pray for him, I wanted him, of course, physically to be strong, but I think he was asking for even more than that. And then when we think of biblical examples of strength, most often we think of Samson. That's who I kind of thought of right away. And his account in his life would be appropriate for the subject today, but I decided to cover here in a little bit some of the life of another very strong man we know of in the Bible. And that is King David. Now, we know when Samuel went to anoint him as king, God didn't let Samuel in on who it was, and so he kept looking for the tallest, the strongest, the biggest. At that time, David was so young, he apparently didn't fit the description. But it does say he was beautiful, he was good to look upon, but he was quite a bit younger, and he was tending to the sheep. But as we know, King David was the one who slew Goliath. And we can maybe think of King David as a poem writer, playing a harp. But as he was about ready to go out and meet Goliath, he reminded Saul, well, I've killed a lion and a bear that was attacking my father's sheep. So David, who we read about, has close to 40 mighty men around him as his entourage, and this it was always a time of war during Israel during that time. And I think we have to consider, though, the musician, the poet, David was quite a mighty man himself and a warrior, and we don't want to make the mistake of not recognizing that. In fact, God said he was a man of war, and the women would sing, Saul has killed his thousands and David his tens of thousands. So we know David had a great deal of strength. I would like to give the title of the sermon. It's a little bit wordy. It's got 3 phrases in it. And the title is this: A Little Strength, the End of Ourselves, and the Strength of the Lord. Now you might recognize that phrase, a little strength, from Revelation, the 3rd chapter. And Revelation 3 is one of the letters to the churches, the Church of Philadelphia in particular. And I'll read Revelation 3, starting in verse 7. And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, these things says he that is holy, that is true, he that has the key of David, he that opens and no man shuts, and shuts and no man opens. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door, and no man can shut it, for you have a little strength, and have kept my word, and have not denied by my name. And I'll skip down to verse 10. Because you have kept the word of my patience, I also will keep you from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth. And Christ says, behold, he comes quickly. And then verse 12 says, him that overcomes will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out, and I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which comes down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name. And verse 13, which is mentioned a few times during these letters of the churches, he that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. So we look at this prophetically. We sometimes want to assign it, but there are 7 churches, and we're instructed to listen to all of them. But we recognize here that we have a little strength. And when I think about growing up here from a teenager on, and I've been here around over 45 years, one of the blessings that I've had growing up in the church here and living here in the church is the many opportunities to know and to learn from so many patriarchs and matriarchs in the church. Yes, pillars of the church that we know now, some of you, and that we've known through the years. And if I can use the analogy of the athlete again, many athletes rely pretty much solely on that physical ability, and they're good at what they do. But the really good ones, they nurture that physical strength, but they also nurture their mental strength, their emotional strength. And when they do that, they make those around them even better. They lift them up, therefore making the team and the locker room a much more fulfilling and profitable place. And I think there's even some great ones who exercise a spiritual strength. Not all of them will publicly say that or make a big statement of religion, but you can tell by their example with their families and the way they respond to their teammates and to situations. I believe the great ones can lift those around them up through strengthening all those areas, not just the physical. And I mentioned the locker room. That aspect of sports, if you followed sports for a long time, sometimes that is the deciding factor on whether an athlete is hired. He may have great physical skills, but he may also have a lot of other troubles, and sometimes he will find himself unemployed. We know of some like that now. But I know I'm blessed to be a part of this locker room, this spiritual locker room in the church. Blessed now and blessed through the years. And, there aren't any short-term contracts with those I've known. They're all lifetime, and they're better than a contract. They are a covenant with God. So those strengths, I've noticed throughout the years, yes, we have a little strength. Probably not so much physically, but mentally, emotionally, and especially spiritually, we've had great examples, and we should strive to be an example. There's a song by Larnell Harris, and I read the lyrics because I picked this subject, and I thought they were very appropriate for this subject, for life. And the first four, I believe, deal with that first part of my title, that we have a little strength. The first four lines say, "Sometimes life seems like words and music that can't quite become a song. So we cry inside and we try it again and wonder what could be wrong." And while we have a little strength, those words sometimes describe how it is when we've done all we can do and we've given it all that we have. And that brings me to that second phrase in the title, "at the end of ourselves." And I thought that was a rather unique line in this song, because the next four lines say, "But we, when we turn to the Lord at the end of ourselves, like we've done a time or two before, we find His truth is still the same, as it has always been. We'll never need more." As human beings, the gifts God gives us, capable, strong-willed oftentimes, we humans, we have a little strength, and we want to handle and solve our problems. And there are times we go through, there are times when perhaps we, maybe not consciously, but we take on things and try to accomplish them solely on our little strength. And when we do, and we hit that area like the words are saying, we may come to the end of ourselves. We've given all we can give. We've done all we can do. So the song continues, "He's all we need for our every need. We never need be alone. Still, He'll let us go if we choose to live life on our own." We have choice. then the only good that will ever be said of the pains we find ourselves in, there are places to gain the wisdom to say, I'll never leave him again. So God gives us the choice to tackle things on our own, and if we put our blinders on and perhaps consciously or subconsciously leave God out, we end up in a condition. But as the song says, God usually lets us learn from that. There is gain and there is wisdom to know we don't want to not have his strength with us as we tackle these problems and challenges of life. I think I've lost my spot here. And I think we're familiar with the old adage and the question, or if we recognize, hey, I'm not very close to God, we have the question, well, then who moved? And we know it wasn't God who moved, it was us. So those words describe a situation like that. But as always, we have the restoration with God. And then thankfully, that third little phrase in my title, the strength of the Lord. Thankfully, we have the strength of the Lord. And the chorus of the song, I believe, encourages us when it comes to that. 4 more lines. It's not in the trusting, not in the trying, but in the trusting. It's not in running, but in resting. Not in wondering, but in praying, that we find the strength of the Lord. When we look at life, we can relate to, yes, we have a little strength. I think all of us have sometime encountered and experienced the end of ourselves in situations. And then we are so appreciative when we regain that connection and the strength of the Lord. You know, I believe the life of King David is an example of that. And I'd like to turn to 2 Samuel, the 11th chapter. And I'll probably read most of chapter 11 and some of chapter 12. And I will keep an eye on the time. And this is David's sin, adultery, his conspiracy to murder Uriah, and then to cover it up and to try to go on. But we notice chapter 11, verse 1, and it came to pass after the year was expired at the time when the kings go forth to battle, that David sent Joab, his servants, with him to all Israel, and they destroyed the children of Ammon and besieged Rabbah, but David tarried in Jerusalem. David, he had a little strength. He was the king of Israel. He had so much strength that he didn't even have to go out to the battle. His men were doing it for him. And we know there are powerful people in the world today. But compared to God's strength, they too only have a little strength. And it came to pass in evening time that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, Is it not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her, and she came in unto him, and he lay with her. For she was purified from uncleanness, and she returned unto her house. And the woman conceived and sent and told David, said, I am with child. So David here is going to use his strength to try to get out of this problem. And David sent to Joab, saying, Send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. But Uriah was very loyal to the nation, to the king, to his fellow soldiers. And David said to Uriah, Go down to your house and wash your feet. And Uriah departed out of the king's house, and there followed him a mess of meat from the king. But Uriah slept at the door at the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and went not down to his house. And when they had told David, saying, Uriah went not down unto his house, David said unto Uriah, Came you not the journey? Why did you not go down into your house? And Uriah said unto David, The ark and Israel and Judah abide in tents, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are encamped in the open fields. Shall I then go into my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing. And so David, he uses some more of his strength. Apparently he had some strength when it comes to partying. He said to Uriah, "Tarry here today also, and tomorrow, and I will let you depart." So Uriah abode in Jerusalem that day and the morrow. And when David had called him, he did eat and drink before him, and made him drunk. And at even went out to lie on his bed with the servants of his Lord, but went not down to his house. And it came to pass in the morning that David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah, using the strength he had to remedy the situation and the problem he had. And he wrote in the letter saying, "Set you Uriah in the forefront of the hottest battle, and retire you from him, that he may be smitten and die." And it came to pass, when Joab observed the city, that he assigned Uriah unto a place where he knew that valiant men were. And the men of the city went out and fought with Joab, and there fell some of the people of the servants of David, and Uriah the Hittite died also. Then Joab sent and told David all the things concerning the war. And we see we look at the scandals and some of the atrocities today, and we see they're not new. Here's some talking points about the battle that came out of it. And they charged the messenger, saying, "When you have made an end of telling the matters of the war unto the king, and if so be that the king's wrath arise, and he say unto you, Wherefore approach you so nigh unto the city than you did fight, and you not know that they would shoot from the wall, who smote Abimelech the son of Jerubbesheth, and did not a woman cast a piece of millstone upon him from the wall, and that he died in Thebez? Why went you nigh the wall? Then you say, Your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead." So the messenger went and came and showed David all that Joab had sent him for. And the messenger said unto David, "Surely the men prevailed against us, and came out into the field, and were upon them even unto the entering of the gate. And the shooters shot from the wall, and your servants and some of the king's servants are dead. And your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also." So David accomplished one goal there with his strength. And David said unto the messenger, "Thus shall you say unto Joab, Let not this thing displease you, for the sword devours one as well as the other. Make the battle more strong against the city, and overthrow it, and encourage you him." So we see David got his wish up to this point. And when the wife of Uriah heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for her husband. And when the morning was past, David sent and fetched her to his house, and she became his wife, and bare him a son. But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord. And the Lord sent Nathan unto David, and he came unto him and said unto him, There were two men in one city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had exceeding many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing save one little ewe lamb, which he had bought and nourished up. And it grew up together with him and with his children, and it did eat of his own meat and drink of his own cup, and lay in his bosom, and was unto him as a daughter, a special lamb to this man, the only one he had. And there came a traveler unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd to dress for the wayfaring man that was coming unto him. But he took the poor man's lamb and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man. And he said to Nathan, As the Lord lives, the man that has done this thing shall surely die. So David gives a verdict. And he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he has no pity. And this is where David will come to the end of himself, when Nathan tells him, You are the man. Thus says the Lord God of Israel, I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you out of the hand of Saul. And I gave you your master's house and your master's wives into your bosom, and gave you the house of Israel and all of Judah. And if that had not been too little, I would have moreover given you unto such and such things. So it was kind of limitless how much God could have blessed David. Wherefore you have despised the commandment of the Lord, to do evil in his sight, and you have killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and you've taken his wife to be your wife, and have slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. So David used his little strength. But then we see there were grave consequences. Verse 10, Now therefore the sword shall never depart from your house, because you have despised me, and you have taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be your wife. Thus says the Lord, behold, I will raise up evil against you out of your own house. And of course, this is later fulfilled during the time when Absalom rebels. And will take your wives before your eyes and give them unto your neighbor, and he shall lie with your wives in the sight of this son. For you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all of Israel and before the sun. And David said unto Nathan, here David had reached the end of himself. I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, the Lord has also put away your sin, and you shall not die. God removed the death penalty. Howbeit, because this deed upon you has given great occasion to the enemies of the Lord to blaspheme, the child also that is born unto you shall surely die. And Nathan departed to his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bare unto David, and it was very sick. And here we see some of David's character after he repented. David therefore besought God for the child, and David fasted and went in and lay all night upon the earth. And the elders of his house arose and went to him to raise him up from the earth. But he would not, neither did he eat bread with them. And it came to pass on the seventh day that the child died. And here the servants of David feared to tell him that the child was dead, for they said, behold, while the child was yet alive, we spoke unto him, and he would not hearken unto our voice. How will he then vex himself if we tell him that the child is dead? But when David saw that his servants whispered, David perceived that his child was dead. Therefore David said unto his servants, is the child dead? And they said, he is dead. Then David arose from the earth, washed himself and anointed himself, and changed his apparel, and came into the house of the Lord, and worshipped. Then he came to his own house, and when he had required, they set bread before him, and he did eat. David knew as long as the child was alive, there was a chance God would change his mind. And as the words in the song say, if we choose to go our own way and God lets us, here David had learned that he's going to stay by God and stay with God until this answer finally came. And then he got up and carried on. And that is what we have to do also. And then down in verse 24, David comforted Bathsheba his wife and went unto her and lay with her, and she bare a son, and he called his name Solomon, and the Lord loved him. And so we have the account of men, some very powerful. Compared to God, their strength is still just a little strength. And we have the account of David's repentance in Psalm 51. And we see that Psalm 51 is more about the strength of the Lord after David had reached the end of himself. We sing this often, and it's a very beautiful song put to music. But in verse 1 it says, have mercy upon me, O God, according to your loving kindness, according to the multitude of your tender mercies. Blot out my transgressions. Blot out the things I did with my little strength. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I acknowledge my transgressions, and my sin is ever before me. He's at the end of himself. Against you and you only have I sinned and done this evil in your sight, and you might be justified when you speak and be clear when you judge. We're starting to see the strength of the Lord, the strength of God. Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and sin did my mother conceive me. But you desired truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part you shall make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me to hear joy and gladness, that your bones which you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my iniquities. With the strength of the Lord, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Something that can be done, that cannot be done with just our own little strength. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. The Holy Spirit, the strength of God, the strength of the Lord. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with your free spirit. These are things that come from the strength of God, the strength of the Lord. Then will I teach transgressors ways, and sinners shall be converted unto you. More things that happen with the strength of the Lord. Deliver me from blood guiltiness, O God of my salvation, and my tongue shall sing aloud of your righteousness. O Lord, open you my lips, and my mouth shall show forth your praise. For you desire not sacrifice. You don't desire what my little strength can do, else would I give it. You delight not in the burnt offerings that my strength can provide. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. O God, you will not despise. A broken spirit, the end of ourself. Do good in your good pleasure unto Zion, the strength of God. Build you the walls of Jerusalem. Then shall you be pleased with those sacrifices of righteousness, with burnt offering and whole burnt offering. And then shall they offer bullocks upon your altar. Brethren, we thank God for that little strength he gives us. And we've really only discussed one aspect of the end of ourselves. There's also that aspect when the physical strength of our temple, of this earthly vessel, when it comes to an end. And unless we are alive at the seventh trump, we will experience that. There will be a pause, a rest, a sleep until the seventh trump. I mentioned I'm grateful for the spiritual locker room we have here in the church and here in this area. And I can remember the words of one of my friends. He is my friend, Jim Cowan. And these words are decades old now. But we were discussing some of the trials and challenges of life one time, and it seemed like then that those kind of trials were only common to those in the church, although we all know better. The trials and challenges of life do not discriminate. But I don't remember his exact words, but they were to this effect. He said, well, we signed up for this, and it can get pretty tough at times. But I can't imagine trying to face the challenges of this life without the strength of God. You know, I've gone on just a few occasions. It doesn't always happen when we lose a member of our locker room, but gone to the hospital to see a member of our locker room before they enter that pause and that rest and that sleep. And, you know, here with my little strength, I'm walking under my own power into the hospital, well-intentioned, going to be an encouragement and a comfort. Then I find myself walking out under my own strength, my little strength, and I'm the one that's encouraged. And I have to think, you know, because that servant of God who's lying there, his little strength, it's about over. And at this aspect of his life, he or she are at the end of themselves. But there's something very special there. They have achieved a strength. There's a strength in that room. There's a strength in that bed. There's a strength in that vessel of honor lying there. They have achieved that chorus line, that it's not in the trying, but in the trusting. Not in the running, but in the resting. Not in the wondering, but in the praying, that we find the strength of the Lord.